yet. Oh, the fan's on. I wonder if it's going to create a lot of background noise. Looks like it is. See if anybody's in. It says it's streaming. Remember last time I had this problem. Okay. So go to YouTube. And let's see. Here it is. Let's see if I'm there. I don't know. Well, people are seeing me. You can hear me? Alright. You're sitting there. Hey, hey, he's a gold hunter. And I was trying to bring my stream up to make sure it was working. I also have the problem. I'm not sure how much background noise there is. Hey, everybody. So, yeah, I don't know why it wasn't bringing it up. That's a weird. So you can see me. Obviously, you can hear me. I can see my mic. I don't know. Is there a lot of background noise going on because I have a fan running, and I can see it on the mic, but I don't know if it's causing a lot of noise. Everybody's just saying hello, but is everybody saying hello like they can hear me? Or okay, it's good. Okay, I'm going to leave it on because the fan feels good. I'm getting nice cold air on me. If that's the case, I was worried that it was making too much noise because I can see it on the meters. But okay, if it's good, it's good. I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, Trevor was supposed. Trevor's here. He's not here. See, well, over here over my shoulder, you can see a bunch of papers on the Fender amp. He was working on the bark notes, and then I said, well, give me a yell when it's almost time, because I want to make sure I get set up and get on live. And then I kind of realized it was time to be live, and I came in here and he was gone, and I don't know where he's at. I think he's asleep somewhere. So there went that. Make sure I get on time. But 107 today. 107. It's mild. It's mild. 107, 106 tomorrow. It's coming down. It actually says next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend, Friday, 99, 98. So we're coming down, which is nice because it was like, we were in the 1 teens already. So, and there's Dallas. So another week, probably the hottest week we've had so far this year in Arizona. So it was a scorcher this week. Not a happy one. No happy Friday, but not a happy week as far as the temperatures and stuff. So definitely something to get used to. Had a journey last night picking up Trevor because the Terminal 3 parking lot was full, so had to go down to the East Economy lot and then take the SkyTrain and then go back down the terminal to go get them. We'll go down and then go across and then back up and collect everybody and then go back down and then get the baggage and then go across and then back up to the SkyTrain all the way across. So it was a pain being over like 110 and doing that. It's not even hot yet. Yeah, it's hot, but hauling all the luggage and heading back in. We got in. They're in safe and sound on their trip. They didn't sleep on the way back, so they slept last night. But I think they thought they were pretty good coming in, and they said, they were just going to sleep through the night and kind of. Then the other problem was, I think it all caught up to them today because they were acting a little cranky. And then, like I said, I came in here and Trevor and I were both in here working on stuff and different projects, and he has vanished, so I take it then that he is sleeping. If I had a little camera remotely, if I was on my iPhone, I would just go in there and We'd watch him sleep. Hot and humid in North Carolina. I tried to ask last week about Don Shade. Is it a good time? You can always ask about Don Shade. I didn't know Don personally. That was when Ron was good friends with him. Yo, what's up, Wayne? Ron Feldman was. He wrote the book. What was the name of the book? I got it on the bookshelf. He wrote that book. It was a peculiar book. He had some different ideas. He had the Pearl, was it Pearl Flicker? Notes and stuff. Pearl knew Herman and her take on Herman, and also it was invaluable on some information he had. He had a different perspective from what I heard, and so, but he seemed to do some pretty good research on some things. I haven't ever dove in too much into his files and what I had on him, so it was. But do you know anything about the prospects in Old West Boulder? There's a lot of old prospects in Old West Boulder. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. Free, peculiar. But yeah, West Boulder. I don't know what prospect. There's a lot. There's a lot of prospects in West Boulder and East Boulder, in Boulder. I don't know what you're particularly speaking on. The book Esperanza, it's expensive? I don't know. I think I got a couple copies of it. I never thought it was expensive. It was just there wasn't a ton of them. Talks about the Old West Boulder. I'd like to read it. Yeah, I think I got a couple copies up there. Because I think I had it. I'd had it many years ago. Because it's more, to some degree a vanity print. And it would be limited. And someone might have printed it again. And then when it was out, I was a newer copy. And just because the cover and everything was in better condition. And then I had that. Yeah. I was trying to think of where it's at. Don Shade used a copper map from Celeste Jones, the prospect. From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Peculiar. I finally made it to the live. There you go. Bob made it for the live. There you go. I'm trying to think of where I would have put it. Okay, I'm going to do one of those rare things and get up and leave the seat. Just looking to see if I know where, because I know I have it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Well, it made sense where I kept it, one of the copies, because I kept it next. No, I didn't. I thought I kept it next to Ron Feldman's stuff, but I didn't. I kept it next to Thomas Glover's. Yeah. Esperanza. Yeah, this is the newer one I had, because it's real. This one's really clean and in really good shape. So I don't know where the older one is. Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, so I do have a copy. I'm just saying. Yeah, and I got two copies. The other ones, I think it's worn or the cover's different. Maybe the cover might be a little different, or is this the older one? I'd have to look at them. I know there's something different between the covers too, so I don't know which one's which. Someone would have to tell me. Greg would know. Yeah, that's one. That's a book I remember picking it up because it has the Pearl Flicker stuff in the back. I'm pretty sure. And I'm trying to go through it and look. Is this the one? I'm pretty sure this is that one. I know Ron was friends with them, and Ron talked about them and all. But yeah, so I picked it up many years ago, and I hadn't really read it. I confused it. You had several books by several guys that I always would confuse back in the day. Jay Frazier was one. He did his. Don Shade did his Esperanza. Jay Frazier says the Lost Dutchman's up in Cave Creek, up in the Cave Creek mining district. Esperanza. I'm trying to think of what the other one. There's a third one, and the three of them I got confused. I think they had to come out around the same time, is what I'm thinking, because I don't know. But I would think they came out around the same time, and I remember getting them and then kind of reading them and then just kind of not. And then it was someone else brought up the Pearl Flickers stuff and about Herman Petrash. And like an idiot, I was like, well, where can I find that information or those letters or get a copy of that? And then, oh, it's in Don Shade's book. And I was like, oh, I have that. Let's see. There's Dale. He's in Prescott. Question about Ward's map. Which map? To the Grazia painting. Which map? In his book, Ripples of Los Echoes. Which map? He says that he didn't want to dig because he was sick or something and ended up digging. No, okay. So what happened was Ward had a really bad back and a drinking issue and could be lazy. And DeGrazia was kind of getting up there and then would die of cancer, but Ted wasn't in very good shape and drank, had a drinking problem. So you see the mix. And I think Ted wanted, they went out and they went to do that, and Ted got there, and then once they got their spots and they started to kind of dig, Ted, I think they probably had too much to drink, and then Ted was like, well, we got to bury this stuff, and then he was pretty much was not able to dig, and I guess that's how it went. So then Ward ended up digging. He was told by Ted, was Bob Ward's version of the story, was he wasn't going to have to do the digging. And then it kind of went backwards on him because then I'm sure DeGrazia was telling him, oh, I can't do it. Sorry, Bob, I'm not going to be able to dig this, man. We got to get this dug. We're sitting here with all these. So I'm sure that once they got there, it kind of became that thing as they were hitting off the whiskey bottle, and that's what's happened. Because Hedrick said something about someone else being there and watching Ted walk off. That's a whole different story. That's over in Angel Springs, and that's when they were burning the maps and doing that. That's a whole different story. Larry's story. Larry's story has to do with when Ted had the newspaper groups, and then they took the bunch of the series of paintings and stuff, and they took them out by Angel Springs, and he burned them. And they filmed him and took photographs of him burning them, doing the whole inheritance tax thing. And that's when they said he took some and went off and hid some. Now, one of the problems with that is, at Larry, everybody will tell you they were not complete paintings and all this. There were a lot of pictures taken, and some of the guys that were with Ted said, hey, can we grab some of the paintings that didn't completely burn up? And he said, yeah, some of those actually are still in existence. The 2 or 3 I saw that were pulled out of the fire that partially were burned were complete DeGrazia paintings with his signature on them. So to say they were sketches and incomplete and not complete paintings is kind of, maybe they all weren't, but the ones that the guys pulled out of the fire that were with him, that are in some of the photographs and actually were there, those are actual real paintings and sketches that were signed by him. And then some of you can see in some of the pictures when he stacked them up, because he made like a pyramid of them, and then he just kept putting them on there as it was burning. And I think once they got the photo op, they probably just put the fire out, or it started to burn out, whatever happened. But yeah, there's a newspaper article as well as one of the guys showing one of the partial burned paintings. And from what I could see from him putting them on the fire, and then everything I saw in the photographs, they were always complete sketches or canvases, completed painting, and they were all signed. And then the ones I saw that were partially burned, and 1 or 2 of them I saw in person, they, unless the burn part were unfit, but yeah, they were complete, and they had the signatures on them. And the guys that saved the pieces saved the ones that had signatures on them still. So that was a separate thing. And then the thing with Ward was, during that time period, he talked to Ward and told Ward, there was this, they kind of, I'm not sure how the story was supposed to go, but I think they went out and they hid a bunch of stuff. Now, if you read biographies about DeGrazia, there's several good ones, you will find out that he had a museum out in the Superstitions, and for a while, and Apache Junction did not support it. They gave him all kinds of grief There's a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of history on it, and they really just tried to get him to shut out and run out of there. And they got him finally to abandon the place. Someone else bought the place, and I think they tore the house down and rebuilt a different house in that place. But during that process, that ongoing process there, he wasn't living with his wife there. He was living with a girlfriend that his son, who gave him his son Dominic, who's around now. Anyways, when Ted was there with her, and I can't remember her name offhand. Anyways, she would see him get up in the morning and he'd grab a bag of stuff and go off in the desert. And when he went off and made these trips and took hikes out in the desert and out by the house and went up into the canyons, he would take sketches, and he would take little sculptures or things he made, certain things, and then he would take it, and when he come home, none of that was in the bag. So she said he always was going out in the mountains stashing stuff or hiding stuff or just being kind of, probably thought it was kind of cool. Hey, I'm just going to go out there and put some DeGrazia stuff in the mountains and people can just find it. So there's multi-layers of that. Then Ted also did a film. In the film, and it's hard to ever see, I don't think there's any copies. I think the Foundation has a copy, and it comes out once in a while. You hear about it someplace. Like the last time I heard about it, they had it at Drome, and they presented it at Drome. It's a short film. It's supposed to be a fictional film where DeGrazia and this guy go up in the mountains and find this cave, and they hide a bunch of his paintings and stuff. And there's this, that's a treasure, and then they collapse the cave or whatever, or the mine, and they hide the paintings. That's another source of the stories, and he did the film and that, and then there's a couple of people that say they know where, kind of what that whole issue was, and I've had a couple of people tell me they knew the general area where that's at. So you have Bob Ward's story of the maps, which is up at Fish Creek, and then you have, I don't know exactly where the film version is set, it's a different one. Then you have the ones he was hiding out by the museum, which was more on the west side of the foothills. And then you have the Angel Springs, which is what Larry was talking about. Larry was talking about when they were up in Angel Springs and all burned those. And supposedly, and what I heard from someone was he just put them up in trees. And I think they said they weren't even really in tubes and stuff. It was when they were going to burn them, he had a bunch of rolled up ones and he just stuck them in trees and stuff, and they probably have blown away or deteriorated. There could be some old pieces of canvas up in there, but that's what I heard about. That was someone who was a pretty good source said they found one of them and it had fallen out, and they believed he just wandered off for a while and then just put a handful of them up in trees in different places, and those are probably destroyed because they weren't in anything protective or whatnot, and maybe some of the guys that were with them. But there is, if you ever in the archives, maybe the next time I'm at the archives, I'll have to get some of those. I got copies of the newspaper articles somewhere. I don't know where they're at, but I have copies of them where it shows the guys that took them. And they even asked Ted, "Hey, you're burning these for the, but can we grab the scraps and some of the ones that didn't fully burn up?" And he was fine with it. So they asked for permission, and they got him. And then there was newspaper articles after he died of these guys saying, yeah, he burned them. And they were, and they were saying they were real paintings, which is another argument. So he did burn real paintings and sketches, stuff that would have been very valuable to make his point. And he called the media out. He also wandered off and stashed some stuff while he was out there. Maybe he was just getting tired of burning stuff and decided to wander off. And then him and Ward went out. And the Ward story, the only reason I'll support that a bit is there was a number of people that kind of checked into it. And Ted's brother or someone said he came by the house one day with a bunch of tubes and stuff and was talking about sticking a bunch of canvases in these tubes and taking them out in the mountains and burying them. And his brother didn't have the time for it, or I'm not sure what happened, but that's in another biography. And these are books about interrelated stuff. I don't think the Bob Ward story is really in the biography books. So when you start reading something, you'll find something and you go, well, that makes sense. It's about the same time period he was supposedly did this. Books obviously were written long after Ted and Bob had passed away. So it seems to kind of connect with what they were doing. And Ted was very clear, if you've read most of that stuff, is that Ted was very, very clear that they did not go out and spend a lot of time in the mountains. Degrassi would stop by, they'd hang out, they'd talk about different stuff, talk about treasure and stuff, but they never actively hunted, they were never partners, nothing like that. So it surprised him when Degrassi came by. And the funny thing is, Tom Collenborn had very similar stories. Degrassi would just show up and just kind of like, hey, what's up, Tom? Hey, there's a problem with my truck. I don't know. I think it's... And Tom said that there wasn't a problem with the truck. It was just Ted had to have a reason to come by to see you, and he would come by and talk with you, but it was a bit odd. It wasn't like he could just stop by and say, hey, how are you doing? Let's go sit out here and just chew the fat. He had to have a reason, or there had to be some odd thing. So who knows if that was what it was with Ward and all that. I just picked up Ron Feldman's Crooked Mountain. That's a pretty fun book. It's a fictional book. Read the back cover. Is it a fiction? Like, it's a fictional book about something that Ron thinks happened. Okay. Does that suffice it? It's not a factual account. It's based off the Cox notes, which, if you've read Ted Cox's notes and a lot of material, you might say that's not fiction. That's fiction too. But it's Ron telling the story, Ted Cox's story, through a piece of fiction. So it's not, it's meant to be kind of Ted's version of what Ted says happened. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Okay, so we got the Greetings Way. Spent many hours at the Gallery in the Sun. Now, is this the Gallery in the Sun in Tucson, or it wasn't called the Gallery, it was called the Superstitions Gallery up here in the Sun. Some of the discussion is that there is a painting in the book. It gives a clue. I don't know. I have some of the paintings. I have some of the prints and stuff and the material. I have the book. There's a book that has all the material. In Tucson. The Tucson one's cool. Anybody wants to make a trip, if you want to go to some place and just be totally mind blown, it's a self-guided tour. Go to the Degrassi Gallery in the Sun. The man used coat hangers, soda cans, whatever, built this place by hand. In each room there's a little fireplace because that's how he kept warm through the winter as he built each edition. It's pretty incredible. Even the clothes, the hat, and everything he was wearing, the bottles he was drinking from before he died, are still there. And it's a testament to who he was, but it's just, you start looking at it closer and closer, realizing, wow, the level of commitment and energy he put into everything. So it's a very cool place. I've been there. We did a couple videos on it as well. But a really fascinating place for me. Every time I go, I see something new. Ted's buried there, by the way. When you go around, when you go west of the museum, you're getting out by the Kino Chapel, or whatever he calls it. You'll see there's a little yard, and there's like a pyramid, and a little rock thing, and all. You'll see over there's a tree and stuff, and when you get over there, you'll realize he's buried there. So Ted's buried there, so you can visit. You can visit Ted. I think he put a lot of clues about a lot of things and a lot of different stuff. I think he was an unusual guy, and I think if him and Bob Ward got together, that would be two very unusual guys coming up with stuff that was too complex. And jumping back to the Ward stuff, is when Ward put his book out, he put a map of like, okay, here's where we did the paintings. And he included with the book another map about the paintings. And then he did another map about the paintings because he was getting disappointed nobody was finding them. And then before he died, Frank and I have copies. There's a few people that have some drawings he made before he died, trying to be clear on where they were, how much those fit in. We figured out a lot of stuff on that, and then we talked to some people, kind of like trying to figure out, okay, you guys knew him, so what did you think on these clues? And then the feedback they gave us was they were going completely the wrong direction, and they had no idea. It wasn't simple. It was complex and simple, but he would do something two different ways. His levels of complexity went with levels of simplicity. So it trips you up because you're trying to overthink it, and then there's times that you're so out of water. And what we did was just, I started looking at more and more of the manuscripts and things he wrote, knowing he was pretty smart. And then I just started backing up from it and looking at how meticulous he was. And then that kind of started triggering some things, because I started probably getting in a bad, weird mental place. But I was starting to understand how he was doing things. So if he was going to make you a map, he was going to make it tricky. But I think he made it so tricky that even if you knew him, it was going to be very difficult to understand. I believe one person knew where everything was, and he doesn't know. The Mission in the Sun, yeah, but it has something to do with Kino too. He took Sal down there, and Sal was talking about it and said, yeah, before Bob died, we went up and down. And Sal was walking me and Frank through the places they went. And it was really interesting because we found it was a lot of stuff from the books and maps and different things that Bob talks about that nobody knew where they were. And we were like going, wow, this is pretty cool because it's very real. Wow, this actually exists. And Sal, we realized he took him down. I think he took Sal down to kind of like tell him, kind of get him halfway there on some stuff. And I think he probably let Sal know that he didn't know why they were down there. And so he didn't remember and really follow along. He said, we just drove this way, and then we walked down there, and then he talked. I don't know what he's talking about. And then we go back over here, and we drive, and then he seemed pissed off. And then I'm like, why did I piss him off? And then we get in the truck, and we go over here. And if you know Sal, he was like, I don't know what he was trying to tell me. And all this stuff. And I think Ward was trying to tell Sal, here's some of these things, maybe help someone out or help yourself out, because he really liked Sal. And it just didn't work. So we know Sal was down there. We figured a few things out, and then we knew that's where he had taken Sal. And Sal's like, oh, yeah. So it's not, we spent time with Sal. We tried to walk it through with him, and it didn't amount to anything because it's just way too far down the line. So I am late. Deal me in. There you go. Okay. Mission in the Sun was built in memory of Padre Kino. Yeah, and then it burned up, and they've restored part of it. They left part of it burned up, and then they restored part of it. So everybody kind of remembers the fire that happened and where it was damaged. I got pictures before and after the fire. But it's very, very cool because when you go there, you see how he used anything and everything to build these places, and he kind of like did it on his own and a lot of the work, and it's pretty cool. Copy of Bob Ward's book on Amazon, and I think, Bob wrote Phantoms of the Superstitions. Then he wrote some other books that don't have titles. They're just manuscripts of all kinds of information. And then he wrote that book, was one of the last ones, and they're all very uniquely different. Rick Gwynn had one that was just botanical plants of the superstitions, drawings, and then descriptions of them and uses in medication and whether you could eat it or not. It was really cool because Bob could really draw. He was really a good sketch artist. He was a good writer, but he was a really good sketch artist and had that stuff. And then there's one on survival and stuff where it tells you how to build certain components, things to survive. Not just like shelters and stuff, but all kinds of crazy stuff. And the Val Paris articles are generally from the Phantom stuff because you'll see where they kind of fall into that. So he had all this different stuff, and Rick Gwynn got a lot of the stuff from Bob's last wife. And Rick and I sat out with it. He didn't want anybody to copy it. I don't know where it's at now. I don't know if Will or Jeremy have it or what happened to any of it. But it was really interesting. Now, I wasn't telling you where there was treasure or anything, but it was interesting because it let you see inside his head. I don't know which one it is, but there's one that tells you all his ciphers and codes that he was creating. So he would create different ciphers and codes and tell you how to make ciphers and codes and how to break ciphers and codes for different groups. It was an amazing amount of information that he was processing writing. If he would have ever focused on really something very specific and had a good editor, he might have written a really excellent book on the superstitions. The problem is, it's all over the place, and it's good information, but it's never fits. I like the one about the animals and the plants and the superstitions. That book would have actually done really well because the sketches are really excellent. And it's funny because Ward said he didn't like DeGrazia's sketches and paintings because they're very childish. If you see Bob Ward's drawings and sketches, you would say, yeah, DeGrazia's stuff is kind of a childish kind of version, because Ward was very, very artistic, and he was very mechanical, and his stuff really, really, I wish I had a couple of them here, but no, he was really good. And Ripples of Lost Echoes was like one of the last things he was writing. He had that published. I'll have to do something. It's in New Mission, New Mexico. Hey Wayne, what's your opinion of the park in Cimarron Treasure? I don't know. That would be something. It's still out there. I'd have to go pull that up and do a story on it. What happened to Bambi of the Superstitions? Which I don't know which one Bambi is, because you had Bambi, Bebe. Bambi, I thought, wasn't Bambi the last one? She's the one that gave the stuff to Rick. Teresa, was that the daughter? I don't know. It gets all mixed up because he just stuck them all in the book. He never wrote a book chronologically that made sense. All the guys that knew them, I know Sal knew them. Rick knew all of them. There's not only a few people around that knew all of them and knew them pretty well. And it was Bambi that took a couple people by and showed them where Bob had stashed some stuff and buried stuff down south of Peralta Road. And I know those spots, but because of the park and stuff now, you cannot go out there and dig. So we wanted to go out there and do something with that because we knew there's something in there. So we'll catch up here because I'm staying pretty. Sal told me it was beat up by Ward in AJ last time I saw her. She was beat up by Ward last time he saw her. Okay. And that probably would be true. Hey, and Attaway Girls joined us a little late, but still made it. And Bambi was the stunning one. Yeah, and I won't go because Bob still has family. I know one of the nephews, and there's still family out there. But I was trying to figure out where I was with that. Happy Friday. It is Happy Friday. Yeah, see? Yeah, Bambi. There was different people. Rick and Sal knew them very, very well. Rick really was closer with the family towards the end. I know he stayed in touch. He ended up with a bunch of Bob's stuff. And I don't know what happened to that, like I said. And there were some manuscripts and books, and there was a fire at Rick's, and that stuff was saved. So I don't know beyond that what happened with that. And that was one of the girlfriend's wives, but they took him out. We tried, that's where I was. We tried to get a couple production groups that were like, hey, we're looking to do something. And I said, hey, take us out here. All we need is a backhoe. Get us a backhoe. We'll file a mining claim. Let's clean a couple of these old pits out because we know there's something in there. And we talked to several people, and we knew several of the places, 2 or 3 places we wanted to dig. There were going to be books and rifles and all kinds of stuff. It was treated like a garbage dump, but it was treated like more than just a garbage dump. And it was Bob Ward's version of Yellowstone's train station, perhaps. And there was supposed to be a lot of secrets in these different places. And I know one of them had been many, many years ago, was quite deep, and then it just suddenly filled like 3/4 up. And even people that knew Bob were like, that was, who did that? And the guys that knew him weren't sure how it got filled up. So they were curious, which we believe he had something to do with it. So I said, hey, and I told them the story, and I said, we could do this, and it, we'll file a claim, we'll start to clear it out, and then whatever we find, that'll make a pretty good show. That'd be a pretty decent thing. And I knew from a couple people that don't want to ever be named, a couple of things that were thrown down in there. And I said, so we'll know what we're looking for and about what level. So I said, let's do this. It'd be kind of a great series, and you can get some episodes that's filmed, and I'm sure you guys will be able to package it for something. And I said, it's all going to be easy to do. We don't need film permits. We're going to be able, this will be really simple process. And I told them, I said, this is what we need, and we can do this. And I kind of gave them all the logistics. It was going to actually just bring a crew. Let's get it going. And they all acted very interested, and then nobody took me up on it. And this is years ago when the park was hitting. Oh, I'm sure there's more than a few bodies down in some of that, or some personal items. And we kind of like, just before the park was starting to kind of, everything was changing, and then all the real estate was changing there, we talked to a couple of people again and said, we need to really kind of go in there and all that. I tried to convince Rick, who was bringing in a backhoe and some equipment, and I talked to Shoes, and I was just like, why don't we just file up on one of these and just start kind of scraping the dirt and see what we can get out of it. And nobody wanted to move on it with me. And so it's, whatever's down there is down there. And I even told some other people later that involved with the county of like, there's some things down there you guys might want to kind of take a look at least. And nobody has ever listened to me. So, but yeah, I went out there with someone, I will not say their name. I tried to always say the guys that knew Ward and some of the other people that were out there. Don't think of like you're an accomplice or you're connected to something in some way anymore. Your grandparents, you're this, you're that. Look at this as like someone has a family and doesn't know what happened to someone. They figure they're dead. And all this time later, they'd like to know what happened to them. They've just been missing for 40 years, 30, 40, 50 years. It would be nice for them to have closure. And let's just stand here and you give me some direction, and we'll do that. And that was something Frank and I thought would be really good. And they, and a certain individual, really kind of like pointed me, and I figured out the body language of what I was being told, and we tried to run with that, and nobody cared. So maybe someday, some way, but now that things have changed and the county parks went in, it's kind of a unique way of burying stuff. Someday maybe that's the book in the end I write, is about all this stuff once these people are gone, about all these things and all those little dirty tales, and how we don't really know the truth behind it all, but there was a lot of things happen. Usually the ones they talk about are the ones that probably nothing really happened. And then the ones that were fully explained and there was no issue with, you find out there's a lot going on behind the screen on those. And always not surprising, of course, but any word on Mr. Carlson, the location of the heart carving on South Butte? No, I haven't heard from Jack or Bowser, so I'm waiting to hear on them. Everybody's been kind of quiet, even though I did talk to Shoes and I did talk to a couple other people. So I had a long conversation. Shoes called me about somebody, and we ended up on the phone for an hour or two, and I talked to Frank. Who else did I talk to? There was someone else that called up and I talked to. What's your take on the mysterious disappearance of Daniel Robinson 2 years ago, the West Valley Desert? Weird story that's unsolved. Is that the guy that was up by the Weaver's Needle viewpoint? I don't know if that's... No, that's not that guy. I don't know which one I'm thinking. Is that the guy that borrowed his buddy's car and parked it at First Water and wandered out, and they've never found him either? There's a few of those, so... do you think Jesse Capon may have been any significant... no. He was up on Tortilla. And whether you want to say something happened to him for a reason, because purposeful, because of people or whatnot, I think Jesse Capon, I mean, it's funny. It's not funny. People go up in the mountains, and then their family and people start telling you what a capable individual they were in the mountains. And it's really kind of odd, because Adolf Ruth's son Erwin definitely felt his dad, he was a survivalist, he was this. Nah. It's funny, the families and people will tell you how capable they were, how serious they were, how they'd read all these books and all this stuff, and all of you have, and there's plenty of people who've read books and stuff. And I've met people that go up in the mountains and stuff, and I'm like, nah. I think he went up in the mountains, he thought he had something figured out by Tortilla, and there's a lot of different variations and stories about what people believe happened to him, because he just blindly ran off the end of a cliff. He wasn't there, more than 24 hours before he ran off a Tortilla and died. So let's always remember that. It wasn't like he was out there for a week or all this time and all this. And his tent and supplies were still sitting there, and some of the supplies were still in the car. And so I always thought it was a testament he got the car back in there, because that's a rough road. But he got the car back in there, he set up his camp, he went up there, it was dark, and then he fell, and then basically went head first. I don't know about the whole story, and I know there's some people who believe certain other specific things we will not talk about. But that's another one for one of those books where you talk about what people have said. It's like, you wonder if there's anything truth to it. I look at it, I always say I got to have some sort of truth, and a few people know how I feel about it because they believe a certain conspiracy theory, which it is a theory, and I kind of just don't know if I buy it. I think more of, there's a few things I have questions on, but I think more of that it was just getting late, he went the wrong way, he slipped and fell, which wouldn't be the first person to do that, fall and die like that. He's not going to be the first or the last person back in the mountains that to happen to. That's always a problem. Like I pointed out just recently, there are different versions of different things, but these things happen, and you find out, oh, it's the same story over and over, just different names, little tweaks to them, but the same thing generally does happen to people. So I don't think there was anything significant to Tortilla other than the people that are interested in Tortilla. That's what I feel about that. I have been working on a project for a few years and found the original location of Fort Carolina in the St. Johns River. I have it in Jacksonville, Florida. That's very cool. I'd like to review my findings if you can. So you want to send me something or something? Is that what it is? I'm thinking that's what it is. Yeah, kind of DM me, whatever it is, DM, direct messaging, whatever. Find a way to direct message me and we can hook up and I can kind of look at what you're doing. I also want to look it up in the filing cabinets out here to see what I might have on that to kind of help you as well. No by Buckeye. What are we talking about? Bambi was sending No by Buckeye. The geologist. Oh, the geologist by Buckeye. Oh, that one. Didn't I do a story on that guy? Okay, I don't know. I've done 300 stories now. I'm getting kind of storied away from my stories. Yes, he was in Buckeye. Oh no, is that okay? Now I know who you're talking about. The guy, they found his car and he just kind of disappeared off in the desert. The car was burnt and flipped over and burnt and all that. And then everybody, I'm interested in that train station you talked about. Of course you would be, Bobby. I'll take you out and show it to you sometime, Bobby, next time you're out. Now I know the guy you're talking. A younger guy went out one evening. His car was found. It had been ransacked or burnt, flipped over and stuff on the backside of the white tank. See, that's all you had to say. The backside of the white tanks by Buckeye. That would have been it. And I remember going out and driving by there and talking to some of the guys because they were doing a lot of search parties out there. And they had no idea which direction to go. And that was a weird story because I don't know. I felt like as every person I talked to about that story, I was getting a different version of the story. And everybody was coming up with something completely from a different direction. And I was like, okay, you get into that point where you're like, I don't know who to trust, who's telling me this, because I remember going out, and I wanted to get Trevor and Tyler to go out a few times, because they were canvassing the desert and stuff. And I wasn't sure. It was like, I know what happened to the car and stuff. I was like, okay, did he want to disappear? It didn't feel like that. But was it foul play on which? There was a lot of weirdness about that, as I remember, because I went out and there was a couple different groups, and I know the family was out there, and the family said there was a cover up. It got kind of weird, and that's why I quit. I decided not to go out there because it got strange. I'm trying to remember who else was going out there. Someone I was talking to, and we agreed that it got very strange out there, and there was just something wrong with the whole thing. And then we basically, I just said, you know what, I'm gonna step away from that because I don't want to get my feet deep in this. So there was something wrong with going on in the investigation and a lot of stuff with it. And I don't think we'll ever. Yeah, now I remember what you were talking about. The name didn't ring a bell, but once we were getting the geologist kid and all that, yeah, he kind of just, that whole thing, and then it just kind of vanished. Family was pushing hard, friends were pushing, but it was like multiple different groups pointing fingers at each other. It got really strange. And like I said, when I got out there, I was kind of like, and I was kind of like, and then I remember there was a couple people I was like, well, we could just still go out and search and, grid the area. And that was one of the things I think was I went out and I felt like we were searching or gridding or doing something in the area, and it was like they were trying to purposely not find anything. It was weird because I remember getting there, and then I was kind of like, well, I don't want to suggest because I don't know the guy and I didn't know him. I'm just going to try to volunteer, and I'm not going to volunteer like, oh, I'm the great, I'm great at this or anything. But then I was looking at the approach and I was like, ooh, it's like, where, and then I was just like, man, I'm getting kind of funny feeling here. So I didn't know if it was just they were amateur, they didn't know really what they're doing, or there was that weirdness of you were getting so much weird information from different sides. You weren't sure if anybody, why are we here? Why are we searching over here? You guys have a specific reason? No, this is the search area. We really need to grid. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to me. It got weird. So, Dallas said, what's your opinion? The supposed lead to Jesuit treasure. Man, my mouth wasn't working. Don't know entirely. That's something I wanted to do more of a story on in detail. Because I would like to see some original copies of that. It's one of those things that I can honestly say I've held and seen 2 original treasure maps my entire life. The Hank De Andrea one, which I saw that in person, and then the Frank Fish map. And I know both of those were authentically from, they're very old, and if they're hoaxes, they're very, very old hoaxes. Very different. And I always hate when I read about something and people say, well, there's copies or there's this versions and stuff. And it was one of the things I was interested, I think that was one of the ones I was interested in, Trevor. Anything unique he could find or or, concerning out in Spain. Not this trip, the trip previous. So I think that's the one. I was looking for some more information, and I wanted to kind of look at it from a more historical view, because a lot of people from more the academic historical side generally will poo-poo that stuff. As soon as you mention a few things, then they just poo-poo the whole thing. And then there's other people that just totally jump on board and think they've ciphered everything, and they jump off and go off the deep end. And I sit in the middle, and I'm always looking for something that's realistically there, of an inventory or something, because I believe people write things down everywhere in our lives. Here listening to me today, there are people that make lists. There are people that have yellow legal pads, and they write stuff down. And they write stuff down all the time on stuff, and they keep the legal pads, and then they get another legal pad. And there are people that just write, and there are people that don't. And there are people that draw sketches and stuff. Bob Ward, and they write, and then some people later. So you always have that. So there should always be plenty more information on things, and there should be other things that correspond. I can't believe if there was anything significant, there wouldn't be more of it. And then when I hear about something like that, I go, I can kind of like believe in it a little, but I'm not always entirely sure, because as soon as I get to that point, I find something, and I can't know, I don't remember what it was with it. I'm going to have to go through some notes that made me kind of step back and go, I'm kind of not sure again. That happened a lot with the Frank Fish map, and a lot of this comes from the profile map, because I was an Adolph Ruth profile map guy. Man, that was me. Profile maps, everything. Fits about 50,000 places in the mountains, but that's the one. The Ola and all this. And then Randy Wright did a really cool workup about it, and I read it, and then I was with Randy, and I asked to look at his notes and stuff, and I went through his stuff, and then I was like, man, that was so disappointing, because the map that from the Killer Mountains that really got me started enrolling on it completely jumped the shark. And then I realized, what do you do? So you just throw all your books aside and walk away. And I was like, no, that means there's a lot of good stuff out there. And that was what I then really thankful. What supported that later was a lot of good work that Gary Hanna, Larry Hanna, Gary Cundiff, and then Paul Shimmick and some guys did on Adolph Ruth and Eleanor Cleveland. It was Eleanor Ruth's letters and the stuff involving that, because then they were pulling all these different letters and stuff to different people, and then I started going in and looking at what Earl and Irwin would write, and realized they didn't know the maps well as they presented. They really sometimes didn't have a clue, and I realized they were presenting maps perhaps that weren't really maps. Hey Jax, fine time for you to show up, huh? Better late than never. So that was that. So because of that, then I became very distrustful of maps. But that was the only one I really liked, because something about it was the profile. And then it took me a long time with the fish map, because when I first heard the Frank Fish story, I found every fault in the world, and I thought, yeah, it was and then I met a couple people and talked to a few people, and then I really started to realize a lot of the stories about it were coming or written by, or people were presenting things about it, were people that just didn't like it, didn't care for him, didn't care for the story, and they were kind of like making sure people weren't going to believe in it. And I was like, why is that, man? If it's real, it's real. So I started looking deeper into, and the problem with Frank Fish is, after he, outside of Who Murdered Frank Fish and his little treasure inventory book about different lost mines and stuff, and then a few articles that were on the internet, there was very little information, and most people that knew him wouldn't talk about him, and it took me a long time to dig and dig to get people to talk to me really about Frank Fish. And that was like, then I got kind of like, hold on, there's something here. And so from there I was able to okay, because other people interpret his stuff wrong doesn't mean it's invalid. So I started backing up, and that kind of changed. So that map, and then the Hank De Andrea one that came from the back of the Bible in Illinois, those were the two that I kind of realized, you know what? And it was basically, both stories made sense when you take them back to their bare bones without an author trying to embellish them. Please, any updates to the Pyramid Rock you found in the Spiral Cave? It's on the, you can see it on the shelf. Oh. It's so hard to do that. There's the Pyramid Rock. It's sitting right there. Let's see if it'll shake the maracas. Nope. Okay. It's there. I haven't done anything else. I kind of been slowly letting it do things. But it's back there. It's sitting right there on the shelf. So, energizing. That's a shelf and a wall that has no electric in it. So it's been very quiet over there. The electric that he's using over there runs all the way back around here. So the whole idea was to kind of like nullify it a bit in case that's what it was. But continue to do some things. I haven't been too... This summer I should do a couple things. Try to energize, but I really wanted to energize it and see what happens with it. And who knows? But there was another thing I was going to do with someone to verify if it was something that they specifically had addressed and talked about. And then that was, they kind of like told me a kind of a concoction of a bit of a story that I wasn't sure, and then the conversation was dropped, and I thought if it was anything connected with what they were talking about, they would have been very interested to reconnect with it, and they weren't. So I was very surprised. The 6 versions of the Bark Notes, what are the differences? Nothing really. The Bark Notes differences you'll find is just spelling errors, where people either made new spelling errors or they tried to correct other things. So you don't find... I've seen, 3 different versions that people say were different versions, and I can't tell you whether they were or not, because it was literally so minuscule. It wasn't really any information. It was misspelling of words, or I'm sure the first one they wrote out or typed out or whatever came out of the shorthand, there were things done wrong. So I think that was the difference between the versions. Trevor's right now typing up a new version, and his frustration is words are spelled wrong and different things with them, and he's in that position. Do you correct it? What do you do? I always wanted to put it together and correct the mistakes of names and certain things, of saying, here's historically what it said, but instead of Helena, just put in Julia, because he, even in the letters addressing the notes and his information, calls her Julia. So he said things in the notes for a reason we don't really understand. Maybe it was for privacy for some people. I don't know, because he used other people's names. We don't know why. She had passed away, so it didn't really make sense, unless it was someone else did it or misunderstood. It's very odd. So I almost thought about telling Trevor, let's type up and make a version of it that's clean and doesn't have those things. But then you're kind of toying with it. But we do have Jim Bark's letters, and in his letters he talks about Julia and Reinhardt, and he uses their names perfectly clearly. He gets all the history right. So when someone says he didn't know what he was talking about, he never met them, and I had someone once tell me that, he never met them at all, and then I was like, yeah, but then you read his letters, he obviously knew them, and he knew Herman, and he knew everybody, so what are you talking about? I mean, it's kind of why he did that. The notes are very, very similar. It's just misspellings. It's not even interpretations. It's not clues. It's basically they use the wrong word somewhere. And maybe it was from, like I said, when they copied it, I've heard it was going to do a tape recorder, and I've also heard it was shorthand. And one or the other is what happened, and whatever happened in that, I think there were things done wrong. And some people corrected them, some people didn't, and then other people that made copies made their own mistakes. and that's what you're living with. But and I think Thomas Glover told me he felt pretty much the same about it. It wasn't really any difference. The notes are the notes. There's nothing further. The questions and other material that were used to do the notes, that stuff would be fascinating. There's probably a pile of stuff that's just notes and actual notes that he used to build that manuscript, and what he left out and what's in those would probably be very interesting to us. Okay, the pyramid rock, bark notes, per file map, never start me with that. When do you drop the sick licks? It's something I've been trying to get to, which should make everybody sit up in interest. Pizza Friday, have pizza on the pavement. Yeah, well, I hear bells and whistles going off, so I know pizza's getting close. Not everywhere, but Arizona is special. Arizona's very special when it comes to heat. Remind me about the theory about the Peralta stones, Kabbalah. Theory? Well, it was the pony from the coloring book. I don't know what the theory is. It was a coloring book. And someone once actually presented the coloring book, and that was from up in Oregon, from his daughter's coloring book or niece's coloring book in Oregon, because that map isn't part of the original stone maps. He carved the other ones down in Texas, and then when he went to design those ones, whatever it was, that's why when they're on the bumper of the car and all that stuff, you don't see that map because it didn't exist at the time. And he used a different rock and did something different later for that, and it was a witch, and then which he kind of did a little freehand on, and then the pony from the coloring book, which his daughter even said that was from a coloring book of mine that he used to make that. And you got to remember, he carved a stone map before the stone maps, a different stone map that there's pictures of on the internet, it does get stupid. I mean, when people say that is impossible, he did not do this, he had nothing to do with it, he never did it, and then you find all the carvings and stuff, and then on top of it, he made a treasure map that says something like treasure map carved into it on a stone map. So it does get kind of over the deep end. It could have been made as a really cool little documentary with kind of laughing, because I think you would think Travis Tomlinson, if he had a sense of humor now, would be just falling over laughing because of all that. Sick licks, though. And I take it you're talking about those things behind me on the walls. I wanted to do something with them, and I wanted to set something up. And then the last 2-3 weeks, every week, because I've been doing radio shows and podcasts, not just my stuff on lives, but I've been doing other things, I've been sitting here and kind of like, okay, I have this different idea for lives on Friday, something a little fun to kill and kind of just bring in and kind of do something a little different each week, just if it takes 5 or 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And I came up with this idea, and I wanted to test run it with the audio and the mics and stuff, and then listen to how it was, and then get rid of it, delete it, but get the balance so it sounds good. And soon as I came up with that idea, we started having nothing but problems. And then Trevor went to Spain and France, and now he's back, so we'll probably test it after we catch up everything we're doing, because we got a lot of catching up this weekend to do, of which you can see how close this is. Unusually close. That's because there was work going on. While he was working on film, I was over here working on music, and so there was a lot going on there. So we're trying to wrap up a number of different things and do that. And so I even thought about, I think it would be boring of the recording process of stuff and some of the bed tracks, and then just kind of, I told him, would it even be interesting to film it, kind of going through some of it? And then I realized some of the stuff is kind of long, and when, it's really interesting to hear a piece of music and see a 4-minute behind the scenes video, but when it's like a 5, 6, 7 minute track, and you're watching the repetition of going back through and adding to it because it's a one-man show, it's really annoying. In fact, today my daughter said, can you please stop or put earbuds or do something? It's driving me insane, because she was listening to basically the same drum beat and the same drone from a synthesizer as I was overdubbing for hours and hours and hours. It was just a loop of the same thing. And I get it a little, but I was in a headspace of like doing stuff. So it's you know, and so Trevor and I agreed it would not be very interesting. This is a cool ashtray someone made for me. See that? American Spirit? Yeah, it says American Spirit. They painted the inside of an ashtray for American Spirits because that's what I smoke. But that was kind of a neat thing someone made for me. So I got that. And then I have my rock. My rock. Someone made for me. So there's some cool stuff. Cool stuff. Occasionally get cool things. And they are here. I don't have anything within hand's reach here. I have this. My Academy Award. My obelisk. My Led Zeppelin obelisk. But there we go. Okay, so let me catch up again as I go off the deep rails. Someone needs to bring me back around or to curb me back in. Not a big fan of the stone maps. Always willing to be wrong. Is Travis Tomlinson Travis Marlowe was the guy that bought the maps off of Travis Tomlinson's wife. He used that pseudonym. I know, we don't want to use Travis's name, and I don't want to use my name in writing the book. Let's confuse the fuck out of everybody and use Travis Marlowe, which makes no freaking sense. Yeah, that was what he did. And kind of like, yeah, I'm sure. But anyways, that was the guy that ended up kind of getting in trouble and stuff for selling too many shares. You know, there's a few people like that, right? We're going to start off with 1,000 shares, and I'll give you 5,000, and I'll give you 5,000. It's like, huh? But you get 50%, he gets 70%, and I'll take 42%, and you get 80%. And, huh? So, what was it Frank told me about a guy once said he gives so many percentages away. He said he said nobody was paying attention to the percentage numbers, and he said he gave away about 300%. But when people think, you know, they believe in it, think they're going to get rich, that's it. But yes, Travis Marlowe, Travis Tomlinson are not the same. The guy that Travis Tomlinson's wife said, "Sucker," as he went down the driveway, that's the guy who says he's Travis Marlowe. So, and I don't know why he did that, I don't know. Who was the tall guy with the walking stick on the Don's hike that picked up a shell and said, "Look at this shell, it looks really old. That's a pistachio shell." We're not going to make fun of people today. And everybody that was on that hike, except for me, you, Trevor, Greg, because Greg doesn't care, their identities will always be concealed. But I do remember that. Barry Storm, he even drank too. There's a theme for him. Bob Ward, Ted DeGrazia, Barry Storm. Barry was, you know what's funny is between the three of them, Ted DeGrazia, Barry Storm, and Bob Ward, he was probably the worst writer. And I've seen some of the drawings he made. He wasn't very good he wasn't a very good sketch artist and drawing and stuff. So he was creative, but they all three drank way too much. Yeah, I don't want Dallas. It's just Trevor and I have kind of went back and forth because we want to kind of do the video, and then I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk to a few people and say, hey, I don't want anyone to kind of feel funny that they're in the video or this or that, but it was a cool hike and it would be good to get more people out on the hikes. But I don't want to, it's kind of that we're trying to figure out, and so I'm going to have to talk to a few people and say, hey, I know most everybody wouldn't have a problem, but if someone does, I kind of understand it. If they, they think they're their Batmans and Robins, and they think they need to keep their keep their secret identities, though they're not really secret, but I try to humor that. Trade shells are a real thing. That eyesight, I feel, fuels that. Bad eyesight fuels the negative. Bad eyesight fuels the imagination. In the water right after you. Yeah, that was funny. Everybody falling in the water. That was pretty But like I said again, Trevor has some good footage, and it doesn't make fun of anyone, but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of funny. And everybody did a pretty good job, and we had a good time, so ignorance is bliss. I've always felt that I would be happier and feel more comfortable in life if I was stupid. I think there's such a thing as being too smart to understand how fucked up are you, and then there's a way of being too ignorant, too stupid to understand. And sometimes you get stuck in the middle, and it just is depressing. And that's how I always feel, is I'm smart enough to realize I'm not that smart, and I'm not dumb enough to be ignorant to enjoy my life. So it's kind of like confusing and all that, right? It's kind of like trying to convince yourself, am I insane? Because if I was worried if I was insane, would that mean I'm not insane? But is the very fact that I'm recognizing this, am I smart enough to recognize that I am insane? That you can go round and round and round and round. But we were at the 5:11 hour. We made it, and I didn't drop out. So we know that's problems fixed or whatever. We never did see Trevor. He is back from Spain, though. I don't have... Oh, he did bring this home. Okay, so we'll show one of the... It is... Does anybody know? Let me just see it if anybody kind of threw it up there. Who this is. Okay, maybe not. See, we'll sit there. And then he has his sidekick. Oh, I have my sidekick. And then he has his sidekick that goes with him, because it's a pair. They can go up there so I can see them at all times. Hey there, Rocky. Hey, Jax. Hey, boys. One on each side? No. Oh, you got blocked. You got blocked. Nobody could tell me. I was getting ready to go, and I thought that would be neat. See if anybody throws it up. I guess if you don't offer prizes, nobody has a clue. Or else I just dropped off the face of the earth. I think I'm still on. Somebody say, you're still on. Or else I'll just... Hey! Ow! Idiots. Nope, nobody's telling me anything, so I don't even know if I'm still up. I'm still here, or I'm still going, or what happened. Hard to see. No. Okay, let's do this. There he is. Yeah. There's one. Who is that? And then there's two. So there we go. Well, anyways, okay. Well, it's considered a complete fail. And I think the colors don't help either, because it kind of blends in. Oh, I didn't know. Is this move? No, I don't know. Don Quixote. Okay. La Mancha. And his trusty sidekick, Sancho. Anyways, all the way from Spain. Bring me the corpse of Don Quixote. There you go. All right, so I'm going to get out of here because I hear the bells and whistles going off. Spanish explorer. He was kind of an explorer, I guess. Very representative of most Dutch hunters. But I don't know. He wasn't like De Vaca or anybody like that. Or anybody. Anyways, no, that was Don Quixote. And we're always a big fan of his here. Pancho and Cisco. I don't know. And Don, after I say it about 10 times, Jorge comes up with it. Jorge's like, I got it. Is there a prize now? Too good. But, I've always been a big fan of that. If you're ever at the Treasure Hunt of the Year Awards, you'll see that our stuff for that has Don Quixote on it. And he's kind of he creeps around and appears in little different things that we do. Everybody have a great... Thanks for showing up for the live. I'll get this out here and share it with the World Wide Web. I was hoping Trevor would be here, but we'll try to get Trevor in. I mean, now... Well, we got him for a couple weeks, and then he's off to... I can't remember. He's going somewhere else. But anyways, I figure he'd pop in, because he's just... he comes from Europe, and then he's here for a couple weeks, and then he's going to be off again. So always a lot to do though. But you'll be hearing more of this stuff and kind of that, and then Sancho Pancho. Hey, Don. Sancho Percival. Okay, we're good. Anyways, so there we go. Everybody enjoy. Remember us on Mondays for Chasing Legends. And like I said, maybe next Friday. Eventually I'll get it worked out, feel everything's working properly, and we'll put something a little different and kind of throw something in there. Maybe get out of the 500 to 1,000 views and we go viral and we all get like excited because we become really popular. Which would kind of suck, because I think if we were really popular, there would be no way to keep up with everything. Because at least this way, I know most everybody that's in here to some degree and all that. But anyways, makes it easier. Well, there you go. Jorge is actually even getting the spelling down now. Don Quixote. Anyways, yeah, you go read the book, and we'll do a review on the book, Don Quixote by Cervantes, next Friday. We'll pull it apart. That would be, I don't know, anybody read that book by next Friday? That's a tough one, because that's a long book, and I'm talking both parts and everything. That would be a tough one. So maybe I will attempt it to see. I'll pull down my copy. And I got a copy sitting right over here on the shelf, so I might pull that down and give it a stab, see how far I can get, because that's a hard book just to read through, because it takes a while. So anyways, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you. I hope everybody has a great, wonderful weekend. The temperature's starting to drop for us here. We should be down to a cool 106 right now. So, Dex is going right off the rails. And there we go. I'm going to grab my pizza, and I'm not going to grab wings, but I will grab my pizza. Thank you for joining us. Giving assignments now. Well, why not? We might as well do something productive with our time. We're not finding treasure. None of us